Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Shadowverse. So, we've done Luna's and Isabel's and Urias's story for the main story. So we only have Yuan's part of the main story. And then I assume we will just have a wrap up in general. Let's go ahead and claim these right now. Waste a little bit of time at the beginning. Just some basic cards, getting animated versions of them as I level up the characters. I'm making decent progress in this quest section. I really am not going to have any trouble at all getting this done. In fact, I'm very much prematurely getting it done. But there is definitely a possibility that you might play this quest, this limited time quest, once and then kind of forget about it and never come back to it, particularly if you're not playing as a new player and getting accustomed to going to the solo section of the menu. That is the problem with a lot of free-to-play games, is that a lot of times you just get so many of these notification indicators that your people's brains just turn off and they don't pay any attention to them. We still have some mystery as far as what's going on with Ayo, A-Y-E-O-H, I believe is how her name was spelled, and J2, which, once again, it feels like Yuan's story is going to be the one that connects everything together and actually tells a much better tale, because you definitely have a problem here where so far it's fairly obvious that this has been mostly Isabel's story, because that was written better than Luna's story, which Luna's story was fine as like a side journey, a B plot, even a C plot. But then Urias's journey wasn't particularly great, because Urias as a character just cannot be written to have any real character growth, even though they tried. So it really became Mono's story at that point. Which there is definitely a decent argument to say, instead of having Isabel, Luna, and Urias and Yuan as the main characters that you select here, why not just have a Runecraft robot character, Tetra's story basically, and just have Tetra be the main character, have her follow her story completely, and then maybe at the end have Isabel meet up with her, or have Isabel be the secondary character in the story, because Isabel's story really is Tetra's story, in the same way that Luna's story is really Nima's story, and Urias's story is really Mono's story. But that's enough time wasting. Let's hop in here. And while the story itself and the writing itself has been mostly improved, Mono's story, Urias's story, the way Mono talks, I think, is that she kind of speaks in haiku in Japanese, and that's been localized and translated in a very bad way for English. But even though the writing in general often is better than the previous chapters, we still are getting a sandwich of this intro and the function and a pretty long bad wrap-up scene at the end.
Of course we'll go.
Jumping the gun, Arisa?
We can't just leave her. I mean, we all know what it's like suffering at the hands of the keepers.
We don't know why she has dimension linking ability.
Let's do this.
Like, because that almost does imply that she got the power from a keeper,
Just
which...
When Tetra first appeared, I felt a small surge of nervous power radiating from the portal.
Yeah, it does kind of
with this Belphomet character reaps of
seem
influence.
like
Reminds me a
she would have had to have
conflict that's broken out
stolen Nova's power somehow
Sounds like all the more reason
to be able to travel. They need to write in a way that people can travel naturally without keeper involvement.
Nexus's whereabouts.
It really wouldn't hurt if there was 3 or 4 different ways to travel between worlds.
Else, I guess.
You had me at Nexus. If we can get even one step closer to her, I'm in.
See, and
I don't know
part
about
of this setup is that they have each of the characters talking when only 4 of the characters are even involved. And that kind of scares me because it feels like potentially they could go back and try and add the other 4 leaders back into this chapter, expanding it, giving kind of a pathetic amount of gold, maybe 300 to 400 gold, which roughly is 3 to 5 packs, and that would be very frustrating. It would also kind of retcon what is directly said in the story, that only 4 people made it. But I'm not 100% sure that I believe or have complete faith that they wouldn't do that.
So this is Tetra's world, is it?
Whereas other collectible card games and free-to-play games, if they wanted to just reward players and give them more gold,
It's too faint to be Nerva herself, which can only mean one thing.
so
Well, let's get to it.
they could just give like more daily quests, or they could give daily login rewards that are better. And they already do that. They have crossover daily login rewards and standard daily login rewards and daily quests. That was one of the things about Hearthstone too, is that their daily rewards were pretty bad, and then they upgraded them a little bit and they still were pretty bad.
Was that alive? I've never seen a life form quite like it.
So yeah,
Ugh, sounds like the damned resistance is at it again.
Scary, aren't they? Oh, I hope the enforcers catch them soon.
I'm of the opinion that
I guess
those are
people
just the two
residents of this
same
world.
the
They don't
same
seem
2
to be in
people.
distress, however. Is this place truly in danger?
I am Tetra, and my world is in danger of total annihilation. A fearsome tyrant named Belphomet threatens us with the unthinkable.
She could have given me a few more details at least.
It would be funny if it turns out Tetra is the bad guy in the story, and the rebellion is the bad guys in the story. Although they write Belphomet, they write and show Belphomet as the bad guy far too
Evacuation announcement?
easy.
This is serious. We've got to get out of here.
You don't have...
Warning, I am permitted to use disciplinary measures in the apprehension of residential law violators. Please present your identification or designated authorization.
This will be
Just a
interesting.
moment. I've got it right here. Hey, this is my ID.
Scanning identification. Error detected. Your identification is missing necessary data.
But that can't be.
Possession of forged documentation is subject to disciplinary measures. Now initiating disciplinary protocol.
So yeah, even the average citizens seem to be
Where did you come
in
from?
complete terror.
Here while you still can.
I don't know what to say. Thank you.
Warning,
Although we're still
the
not sure if those are
obstruction of
human
activities is
or
subject
if
to
those are
disciplinary measures.
robots.
I'd rather have kept a low profile coming to
You almost assume that they're
Hey,
human because there's just a
Of course we'll go.
massive amount of
We can't just
robots
leave
that
her.
don't really look
We all know what
humanoid.
it's like suffering
But
at the
then you
hands
have
of the
Tetra
keepers.
that looks very human too.
guess that girl's made me soft.
This is where in a story you might go into some backstory and say this is like a first generation sentry bot designed to be for offensive capabilities and not to look like humans, where most of the people in the city are
Enforcer units
like
were
5th
programmed by Lord
generation
Baphomet.
androids designed to look like humans.
To immediate...
Although I don't know why Baphomet, particularly if he built all the robots, would even care to have any of them look like a human.
Tetra warned us about.
You just destroyed an enforcer. Do you know what you've done?
Who is this man? He's not even in uniform.
It's kind of funny, none of them bother to even say,
Serving only to torture those they're meant to protect.
nobody
There's
tries to
nothing
get
complex about our laws.
a
They simply serve their function. to control the
uniform and
people
try and
through
hide.
And who are you supposed to be?
I'm Mono. Don't worry. I shan't give you over to the foul forces of the law. Nope. I'm actually Tetra's sister. She's the one who brought you to this world.
And Tetra,
Whoa, where is this
like
mistrust coming
Mono,
from? I can tell you're suspicious of me without even scanning
like,
your heart rate.
she
Perhaps
was
it's the way I talk.
tiring
Well, I
in the
don't
way
speak
she's
like
talking.
This because I want to. Some of my speech patterns are chosen based on a poetic algorithm. You know what? Never mind. I had a feeling you wouldn't trust me, so...
So, like, it's gonna be doubly tiring.
Sister. She is quite talkative, but she is an ally all the same. So I decided to record an explanation from Tetra. If that's not enough to convince you of my intentions, I could share more information.
I'm Ewan. I've come to this world because I felt the presence of a keeper.
Hopefully we don't see too much of Mono. She can be pretty annoying.
Yes, I'm aware. That
She
is to
she
say,
should be,
I'm aware of their existence,
if you're
but
gonna
not
give
their
her
whereabouts.
a weird
However,
quirk
I do know a suitable place where you can
like
all
this, she should be
reconvene.
a third tier character,
Care to
not
take me there?
not even a secondary character.
That's the plan.
Just
it would be rude not to properly
like
guide
if you
our
had
guests.
J2
Our savior.
have a glitch
It's
where
really
he
the
talks in
least I can
poetry
do.
or haiku,
Oh, noble one.
that would be fine.
Please, don't get
But
started.
Mono
I'm not one
is
for
a
fun.
major first tier character,
Fine, fine.
so she
Let's
needed
get
to
moving.
be
We're headed to the underbelly of the
empowered
land,
to
but it's
actually
basically a junkyard.
pass the story along as easily and efficiently as possible, because this is effectively a visual novel, and the communication, the storytelling, and all needs to be transferred and said as easily as possible. Like, imagine if you were playing a visual novel
I
and
saw what you
someone
did earlier.
spoke
You're a
in
brave
riddles
one,
or
aren't you?
code
Well,
or spoke in a
Raven,
heavy
don't take this the
accent.
wrong way.
That just makes things
Completely
worse.
reckless. You didn't know that man at all, so why risk your neck for him?
Well, they called him a
Watching. Who are
man.
you?
Not you specifically. You didn't think I was going to sit back and watch that enforcer attack those humans, did you? I was
Oh, they are
waiting for
humans.
the right opportunity to hack into it. I know what you're thinking. If you've got that kind of ability, why hesitate? Well, sudden movement catches the attention of the enforcers. Not to mention, this unexpected stimulus causes them to act hysterically. Stir them up and they'll attack anything that comes into view of their sensors. Even mundane things like searchlights. Truly masterful creations, aren't they?
So, yeah,
Sorry. Perhaps I acted
Mona
without
does
caution.
definitely make an argument for timing
I
rebellious
swear this
acts.
verbalization system hinders more than it helps. Let me restate myself. This time with less nuance. I'm deeply impressed with you.
Care to elaborate?
Sure. I sense that you have a deep moral code, one that bows more to justice than logic. That's a beautiful quality. I bet that's why my sister recognized you as the right man for the job from the start.
Bows more to justice than logic is a weird way to phrase it.
I'm an open database, ready to answer whatever questions you have.
You probably want to translate
Tetra
that
said
to
your world is
ideals
on the verge of
versus
destruction. But
pragmatism
judging from the state of the citizens and the condition of the city,
or practicality.
that doesn't seem likely. She made it sound like this place was already in ruins, but I see systematic order. What did she mean?
Ewan, destruction is what happens when a tangible form is forcibly reduced to nothing. But what imperils Ialon isn't something that can be touched.
So, you fear the destruction of an ideal?
How to explain? Everything in this world is controlled by a single man, Baphomet. Actually, control might not be the most accurate word. What he does is more akin to absolute tyranny. He decides when the people wake, when they sleep, what they do and how they do it, what they see, say, and hear. He is the sole decision maker.
What's funny is, though, most of the heroes were under a monarchy, so like the princess was pretty much doing it. Was pretty much the same.
Physical structures of this world are quite safe. It's
So
psychological
it
annihilation
is
that
very
looms over
believable
our
that
heads.
Yuan's
Hearts,
world
emotions,
also didn't
what
really
makes people people.
have an idea
I see.
of free will
I've been to
or
several
individualities.
worlds, but this is the first time I've encountered these kinds of conditions.
Unfortunate that we won't be able to rely on your experience, but I'm glad all the same. I wouldn't wish this level of decline and stagnation on any world.
I
no
think
matter how
Yuan probably
good.
hasn't been to enough
And on that
worlds if
note,
he hasn't
Yuan,
seen some world under some
welcome to the heap
level of
scrap we use
tyranny.
as the home base of the resistance.
The only real difference here is just the level of control that he's been able to enforce using robots.
Who's that beside you?
Not a very warm welcome.
And I would definitely would
Is
write
so
it
strange for
where,
robots to feel guarded around
like
outsiders?
there would be
It may seem bizarre to you.
people
But
on the
in truth,
microphone saying, step
can
with
think
your left
for
foot, step
ourselves.
with your right,
That's
step
not to say there's no differences
first
between you
step,
beings
left
who are
step,
born sentient and
blink.
us.
Just insane
Did you
levels
say
of
robots?
controls
I'm
there.
not familiar with the term.
Oh, well, that's unexpected. After having analyzed my installed logs of dead languages and confirming the perfect idiomatic expressions for regular communication,
It'd be funny if these different
seems I
worlds
still
were
missed
actually all in the same world in just different timelines.
I need to ask you something. That
And if he
thing I
doesn't know
fought
what
before,
robots are,
is it the same as you and the others
then is he just assuming that
the answer
these
is
people are
neither
wearing armor? I
affirmative nor
guess.
negative. We certainly both fit under the classification of robot, having been made by humans. But one thing separates us almost completely. Just as I said before, the fact that we awakened can think for ourselves. In that sense, we truthfully are closer to our makers.
The real question here is,
Excuse
can
me, sir.
you
Are you the outside
just
worlder that Tetris built?
watch this
The men
story
and women here don't
and then
possess as
skip
much
Urias's,
functionality as my
Luna's,
sisters
and
I.
Isabel's
But
story?
they're more complex than the robots who
Because
only
we
speak in
kind of had
recordings,
that as
monitor
the
the
experience
city,
for the
or
previous
what have you.
chapters.
I see what you mean.
But we're not seeing anywhere
My
as
name
much
is Yuan,
overlap
and yes,
in the
just as you
previous
suggested,
chapters.
I'm
At
not
least we
from
haven't
this
yet.
world.
Hi, I'm J3. This is Sutton, but a unit from the same series as me, male type J2P04, has gone missing. I was thinking you might be able to help.
A series refers to a group of robots made during the same production run. I suppose you humans might think of them as siblings.
So in other words, you want me to find your
Which,
brother?
arguably,
I do.
the three
I
main
don't
sisters
think
are
you're
not the
a
same
lot.
production run,
Allow me to expound
because
a
they
bit.
all seem to have
Unit
drastically
J2P04,
different
or
abilities and
J2 as we call him,
outfits.
is a bit of a rebel among the members of the
Different
resistance,
abilities, different
and
looks.
always talking about fighting Baphomet head on. Of course, the difference in our power and Baphomet's is clear. It's a suicide mission J2's after, but I suppose idealists never really understand the true consequences of defeat, do they? If he goes through with it, at best they'll power him down. But at worst, Baphomet could mine his memory log and learn all of our hideout's coordinates. It would be only a matter of time after that until we're all rounded up.
And
That's
J2
not
is a
to say
good
hope's already
parallel
lost,
to
though.
Yuan,
J2 is a
who
bit of a
is-
paradox after all.
who is
As
always
rash
jumping
as he
into
is cowardly.
battle
So
and
I'm
not
hoping he'll come
particularly
running back to us soon.
a strategic
to say,
fighter.
As long as nothing has happened to him
Not
yet.
as bad as Urias by any means,
Sounds
but
rough. I'll do
it
what I
does
can to
seem
help.
like he doesn't really know how to
Thank you.
work
Surely.
with others
I
or
believe
plan
he's found
things
somewhere
out.
near Central Tower. Please bring him back to us.
we stumble upon any of my companions.
Then I'll lead them to one of our hideouts. Thank you, Ewan. Normally my sisters or I would go out for search and rescue operations, but there are extenuating circumstances that would make that unwise right now.
Circumstances like being powered down or torn apart for information. If one of you fell into the wrong hands, the enemy would know all the crucial information regarding the Resistance.
You do learn quickly. My sisters and I act as the brains of the Resistance. It's irritating, but our actions must be strictly inconspicuous.
There is
doubly for me,
an
as
argument
I have weaker parameters than the others.
here
You'll
that
rarely catch me outside the base.
because
But back to J2.
each of these new leaders is basically being babysat and chaperoned by one of the main resistance leaders.
And this is?
The main resistance
A
itself
jamming
is
device.
being
It should interfere
slightly
with the sensors of any
reduced
enforcers
in
who come across,
efficiency,
all while having no effect on humans.
where the
That won't pose a problem.
leaders
I should be more
themselves
than
are
capable of taking out other humans
not
on my
really
own.
helping much in the
Thanks.
fight so far.
I should mention, it's not the most powerful apparatus. Once you activate it, you won't be able to use it again for some time. Oh, right. How many allies of yours are you missing, Ewan? I can't imagine more than a few hundred.
Including me? There are 8 of us. Should be, at least.
Not quite the numbers I was expecting. But if Tetra has chosen you to be an elite force, then I suppose the situation is not quite as precarious as it seems.
So she was hoping for a whole
I
army.
guess. But you should watch out for one of us. Name's Urias Formand. Black armor, white hair, and red eyes. Sticks out like a sore thumb. And he's as dangerous as he is unpredictable. If you encounter him, keep your guard up.
You don't have to worry about that. I'm a bigger coward than J2. Speaking of which, I'm sure he's eagerly awaiting someone to rescue him. Central Tower is straight down that road. Best of luck.
All that power hidden within her. And she claims to be a coward. She'd make for a fearsome opponent. Good thing we're on the same side.
And then she just immediately
I should get going.
powered down.
The enforcers don't pose
I don't-
much of a threat.
I wasn't
The
paying
others
enough
encountered,
attention. I don't
they
recall
should be
her
able to hold their own without help.
saying that she was going to power down.
Which means I should prioritize finding J2.
But it does definitely go and show that Mono is
Units were programmed by Lord
is
Baphomet.
falling apart
Any
and
interference with their program will be
very
subject to
limited or
immediate-
no abilities, even if she is strong.
Baphomet.
We might see a bit of a rush here. We're only 23 minutes in here and we're already to chapter 4.
This place should be a bustling city, considering the location.
But even with only 4 leaders, you still are
And
having
yet, no one's here but these machines.
you're having a problem with
Where have all the people
fighting
gone?
just the
The
same
path was straightforward,
surveyors
so
over
I
and
don't
over
think I'm off
again.
track.
Sorry.
Initiating deep circuit scan. A critical error was found in thought processing systems. Emotional capacity confirmed. Initiating termination protocol.
No.
You with the Resistance?
Huh? Yeah. You two?
Emotional capacity confirmed. Uniform violation detected. Initiating disciplinary and termination protocols.
Well, I wonder what the
We'll do
uniform
introductions later.
is
Get
for the
behind me for
robots.
now.
And see, that was a really short conversation there. But that really was all that needed to be said, too. Is just bump into them,
Can I ever
have a
repay you?
fight if you must have a fight,
Are
and
you
then
J2?
move the story forward.
That's what my friends call me. And you are?
My name's Ewan. I'm an ally of the Resistance.
I heard about Lady Tetra bringing a hero from another world. Is that you?
That's me.
Then, please.
It's
you
funny,
have
he
to help
took
me.
complete credit there.
Defeated as soon as possible.
Why? From what I can tell, this world isn't in any grave danger.
Someone very special to me. An older model robot with serial number IO342. Io was taken by Belphonet. If I don't bring her home soon.
Is she your sister?
No, she's closer to what you humans think of as a mother. Please, I have to save Io.
Then I'll help you.
They really are having to kind of stretch here because you have robot characters to then say, well, these are effectively siblings, brothers and sisters, and effectively there is a mother-like robot, which if the robots are built by humans, I don't know how you would have something like a robot. Unless it's the idea that humans built the first models of robots and then robots built the other robots.
We can copy her backup data into a new frame to restore her.
And we now know that's a complete lie.
Just go back, J2.
But
J2P04. I apologize.
She
for
took
the
a
inconvenience. Thank you for watching
attacking
over
stance
J2.
there, but then
No
she
problem.
just said his full name
How's
like
your
a
injury?
scolding
Looks like you're recovering
mother.
Affirmative. Thanks to Isabel, my malfunctioning systems have
Still
been
feel like
repaired.
Tetra's outfit and
You
design
met with
is
Isabel?
just
Is she safe?
completely disconnected with the other
Yes,
robots.
She is fine. I
And
led her to one of
it
our hideouts.
really doesn't make a lot of sense
I see.
that that's the case,
Then that leaves 6
because
others to
had they
track down.
designed her first,
Negative.
then
There were
they
only 2
should have
others.
based
When I
all the
transported
future
your group to this
designs
world, I sensed that only
off of
4 you
her.
had arrived.
And if they had designed her in the middle or
I'm
last,
sorry. I
then there
believe
really
was
is
some
no
interference
justification
by an
for her
outside
looking
force.
this way.
Don't be. We've
Unless
always
they're
known that
trying to
presence
have
of
a
this kind of thing
big
was
reveal that she's not actually
I will return
a
to
robot
Isabel
at
now.
all,
Will you go with me? Or will you try
and
to
just
find
pretending to
another
be a
of your
robot
allies?
and is actually human.
I was asked a favor.
If
So
that
I'll
was the
finish
case,
that before
no,
I make another move.
why have something
Mono
look
has
so
already
incredibly
informed me
human?
that you were asked to find J2. Have you not already completed this request?
I have. But he's looking for his mother. And I
It would be
intend to
funny
help
if it turned out there are humans that are being
Is this a
brainwashed
matter
into
that takes
thinking that they're
precedent over
robots.
reuniting yourself with allies?
Mono will take care of them. Besides, they can handle themselves
Or,
just fine
you know,
without
if you were
my
trying to, if you were going to reveal that maybe Tetra is like the
Central
first
Tower is
robot that
dangerous.
can give birth
like you're
to
intent on
other
stopping
kind
me
of
from heading there.
robots, that
Why?
like biological robotic
Alphabet is
design,
extremely formidable.
that would at
But he
that
needs to be
point
brought down.
explain
not what
the
your
kind of
people want?
heavy feminine focus
It
of her
is,
design.
however,
But
What's wrong?
Mono
that's a
has
little
been
too
forced to enter
complicated
Alpha
of a
Drive mode. I must retrieve her.
that's too
Farewell for
complicated
now.
of a story
Please be
for
careful.
this game to really try and tell.
Strange. Why would she keep anything hidden from me at this point? I'll let it go for now.
Yeah.
Better move on to
Even
Central
though
Tower
I
for the time being.
am willing to say that the story has gotten to the point where it's somewhere between a 5 and a 7 out of 10, which is approaching reasonable and a good quality story. There definitely are bigger concepts and longer stories that just could not be told by this format. You would
I'm getting
need
close.
to have a story completely focused around a fewer amount of people.
Sector clear. Changing deployment perimeter.
Should be able to get all the way to Central Tower with this trinket. I'll have to thank Mono later.
It's kind of funny that they spent the money to reanimate
Was faint.
a
Could be more
glowing
robots.
circle over his hand to show that he's using the jammer,
It's him.
when you could have very
Shouldn't you have
easily
returned to
just
the
had
hideout?
Mono say,
I can't go back.
hold
Lady
this
Tetra said she would
jammer
restore Io, but
in your
she didn't
belt
say when.
and
Lady
it
says
will
Io
block
be the same
people,
afterwards anyway.
automatically block the
I
sentries.
have to save her, but I'm useless on my own.
You're not going to give up, are you?
I don't plan to.
J2 as a character who has a similar level of determination as Yuan.
And she's always had a spare hug to give. I'm not equipped with temperature sensors, but even still, when she held me, I could feel her warmth. This kindness had an effect.
I don't know if you,
and I began to understand
if the story is trying to imply that J2 is ideally in the right to do what he thinks he feels is right, even though it's in direct conflict with following the orders of the people in charge of the rebellion and putting other people in risk.
But I'd do anything to help her.
It's fine. You've got the will, and that's half the battle. We'll find her together, even if that means making Tetra
I don't
wait a little
think
longer.
this is bad story writing there. I think it's pretty good to have a character that isn't just going to be a good little soldier and follow orders, because that is, on a small level, subverting expectations. And if you tell a story where no expectations are subverted, then it's a very boring story where you see the ending very early.
In that case, we'll force our way through.
I think they need to get rid of this guy's gym and probably his coat. That would be useful. This is kind of distracting, this gym.
Sounds good.
This big old emblem.
I'll make short work of them.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of fashion things they could have revised to have them lose a cloak, change their appearance a little bit.
Assaulting infantry units is strictly prohibited
But
by
clearly
Lord
they
Baphomet.
didn't want to spend the budget on
Your
that.
actions are subject to.
I mean, if they were going to even
Was that all of them?
be a little bit smarter, they would have just palette swapped a lot of these robots.
Identifying target.
Like here, there's really no reason to not have like a red, green, and a blue tint over these robots to indicate that they are potentially of different ranks or different styles of robots.
No, it's my
Yes,
fault
they
for
are
being
talking
careless.
about the uniform
You get
code,
hurt?
but there's
I don't think so.
it would be easy
I don't
enough
have
to
pain processors.
mentally explain away that
Well,
different
don't
colors
overdo
don't
it.
violate the uniform code for
I
the
won't.
sentries.
Especially now that I have you to pick up my slack.
Hmm.
I never could do much for Io on my own, but I think I'll finally be able to get somewhere. After all, you've got power like I've never seen. So much of it that it makes me feel a little stronger just standing next to you. Don't think I'm ready for
All of the
combat or
keepers have
anything,
weird
but
names: Nexus of Serenity, Nova of
then I'll do my best
Purgation.
to live up to those
If we do find a
expectations.
third keeper here,
we better get
it's probably
Central
gonna
Tower is a
have
little
some
further
kind of
ahead.
attribute that is somewhere
Man
around
and
subjugation or
Doesn't get any more different than
a
that.
mental sloth of sort,
He can
not
think just as
willing
freely
to
as any human.
think
And he's
freely
got
or
more
act
willpower than
freely.
most, too. Unfortunate that this world wasn't made for the
That would
willful.
certainly explain the way Baphomet seems to not want to let anybody else think or make decisions. But I don't know what specific word that would be. On the other hand, if you are going to have a list of like
I was something.
big bad guys,
I wasn't yet me,
that's not a terrible list of bad guys, frankly,
and I
Yeah.
felt nothing.
to have
No joy.
instead of just
No
fighting
anger,
the devil
no sadness
or the
surprise.
7 deadly sins. Like,
I existed.
for as much
I
as
wasn't really there.
I liked both versions of Full Metal Alchemist, the main bad guys of those are based off of the 7 deadly sins, and they act in their
Those are the
actions
first words that
like
can
the
recall
7
from
deadly
my memory.
sins. and it's pretty much on the nose.
True words.
My precious J2. You're my child now.
Plus, because you're making your own enemies based off of just general concepts or ideals, there's no limit to potentially expand on this. Even if you did run out of ideas, you could potentially have Nexus be replaced with a stronger person who is doing a stronger version of Serenity, or taking that concept in a different direction.
It's the first time I was happy.
Now we're getting a lot of backstory of J2, which really goes to show this is J2's story.
And sometimes angry.
I kind of was expecting Io should look different,
J2, I love
older.
you. That's why I have to be strict sometimes.
Or, you know what,
Sad.
maybe you have him shorter and somehow younger
Please
looking.
don't break and leave me.
Don't you worry, J2. As long as I have you, I'm not going
Yeah.
anywhere.
Making her look rusty wouldn't be particularly hard.
Surprised.
Or just having her have even a little bit of battle damage.
Is she from the same series as me?
Yeah.
Yes,
No?
she is. She's your dear sister.
This is ridiculous.
Wasn't a thing anymore.
This should have been
No sign of
Ioia.
family.
This should have been J3.
And me. We knew peace.
What a terrible decision
It
here.
didn't last long.
What a terrible decision. Just replace those two visuals.
Run!
But Io, they'll catch you.
Because J3 and J2 are supposed to be
If I'm
the same series,
then Lady
where
has
she's
no
supposed to be older.
Unit retrieval complete. Returning to headquarters.
And then her eyes are glowing red, which is interesting.
But in the end,
And
more than any other
it would really
emotion,
suck if Io turned out to be a spy, but then again, that would be too much story to expect from this
I
game.
would try many times to break into Central Tower, but whenever I approached its base, my sensors went haywire. Even though nothing was there, I felt danger. That feeling. Now I know it's called fear. No, worse. It's cowardice.
In all honesty, part of the problem here,
I'm a coward.
with my
Tetra said she can restore her, but
my appreciation
what if she's
of
not
a
the same
story
Io?
like this, and frankly,
But I
my
shouldn't worry
appreciation
because
of
I've
any
been
kind of
so
visual
strong enough to
novel
get her back.
is the fact
You
that
win.
I've become very accustomed
I can see how
to
kind he is from
watching
his
a
eyes.
lot of heavy dialogue things on YouTube at twice
I
speed.
don't have to be the
It is
same
very
coward I was
easy for
then.
me to understand completely what's being
And I'm
said at
still
double
here,
the speed.
Io.
So
You
when you
promised
have
wouldn't go anywhere
a
without
separate
me.
interface like this where I can't
And
speed
I
it
am
up
coming.
at 2x,
So just hang on.
it feels to me very slow. I would say there's probably a lot of points in my life where it has felt extremely slow. And I definitely have run into people in situations where the people
100
feel
clicks
like they're
more, and we'll be
very
at Central
slow.
Tower.
Maybe
Sure.
that's
Is the chair
because
ready yet?
I'm hyperactive
it'll
compared to most people. Or maybe
We'll
it's
leave
just
it to
because
break
I
in. There's just one thing.
think faster, or have grown accustomed
I
to
won't be
thinking
able to
faster.
stay in the area once we're inside.
Not to toot my own
Sorry, I can't be
horn.
of more help.
I can think faster all I want, doesn't mean I'm going to think correctly.
I'll handle the fighting myself. Just don't stray far.
So I may just get to the wrong solution or the wrong statement faster.
I've just
But
scanned
because
the
I've
control
grown
notes.
accustomed
We
to
can make
that,
our move in 5,
it
4,
would be a lot
3,
nicer if I could
2,
say, play this dialogue back at double speed. Play the audio back at double speed. Put the text on the screen at double speed. I could handle that very easily.
No one
Fortunately
pushes us
for
in.
people watching these videos, you can, since these are on YouTube, you can just double the speed up there. And frankly, I don't think I talk fast enough that you would, most people would have too much trouble understanding me at double speed. But personally, I have to go at regular speed. And also, in all fairness, there definitely are people that can't watch videos at double speed. There are people with like thyroid problems in particular, I know, that can't experience the world even in its normal speed, and it feels like they're running in slow motion. And their brain apparently is running in slow motion. I guess maybe
the type to easily toss aside his fellow man.
If I appreciate everything faster, that might be hyperthyroidism as opposed to hypothyroidism, which is slower.
I can sense Io.
I think.
She's here. She's here. Can you believe it?
Good. Is she on this floor?
Yes, this way.
Feel like they're gonna just find AEO and find her like dismantled or broken.
Get back, J2.
Or
Io.
did they put her?
Identification signal unregistered. Hostile unit confirmed.
They put her body, her mind in the sentry bot.
It's me. It's J2. You are Io, aren't you?
Warning. Initiating termination protocol.
Stand back, J2.
So apparently there's a level.
She's in a different frame now, but it's her.
So he seems to be recycling the AIs and the bodies, which does inherently imply that Baphomet actually isn't capable of building robots so much, and there might be a limitation there. Like, he's probably using stolen technology.
Systems failing. Halting combat operation.
Io! It's me! J2! I'm your son!
Intruder sighted. Initiating termination protocol.
This does put a darker twist on the story now, because it does inherently imply every single other robot that you've been fighting could have been a bad guy, a resistance meter.
J2.
Intruder sighted.
That was a different attack.
Termination protocol.
I thought I said we don't have time to.
This actually is a better story, and they probably should have just started with that to begin with. And here we get Baphomet with a custom CG.
Didn't your mothers ever teach you not to enter a house uninvited?
Yeah. It is a much better story if they had just said at the very beginning, Baphomet is kidnapping members of the Resistance, taking away their free will, and putting them into sentry robot bodies.
You'd better not.
No, hadn't I? You had best watch that tongue, intruder.
They're still using the new attack, which I think is interesting.
You know, the usual. Had to rebuild it to make sure that stupid error never comes back. Hope you said bye to mommy.
So he's trying to stop the
How could you?
free will error.
Ah, now that I get a closer look, you're not in a uniform at all. Well, intrusion, insolence, improperly uniformed. That's.
They're really obsessed about the uniform.
Answer me! Do I need a reason to reconfigure my own property? Listen to yourself. Emotions got this one too. Blah.
At some point, I could kind of see siding with Baphomet, though. If you do just think from like humans or humans' perspective, and they are superior than all other things, you could make a fairly interesting argument that he is the actual authority in this world,
I may be a genius, but I'm not a
and that
miracle
he
worker.
should be free to
Well,
change,
that's not to say I can't work miracles, but in this case, frankly, I don't
that he is
feel
free to
like
change the robots
So now-
however he sees.
J2, can you move?
I am also recalling that we have not seen Yuan do his attack where he goes
You can. We
like
escaped.
activate
I'll
at the
keep
end,
Alpha.
where it kind of sounded like he was
Running off
calling
so
out
soon.
some kind of
Guess I can get
magical
another start on
program
cleaning up the
instead
mess
of
you've made.
casting a
Starting
spell
with
or
this
something.
unit here.
And I always did have a feeling that there's a chance
Heavily damaged.
that this whole story might be taking place inside a virtual reality experience, and this is like a
We're already done.
Matrix type scenario. Of course, you could say that for pretty much any game, because they are taking place in effectively virtual reality, even if it's not a particularly sophisticated virtual reality.
Look at that.
Give her back! She doesn't belong to you!
What are you going on about? Of course it does. Stop this. How stop? what
I
feel
would
like?
still feel like this would be a better type of scene to have at the beginning of each of the characters' story, which you could easily have happen.
Output increasing with emotions, is it? See, this is why humans are
Like, you
trash.
could have had Belphomet on a giant cyberpunk, like, holographic screen in the middle of the city, executing robots and delighting in it, and then you know that he's a bad guy, you know that he's evil, and that quickly establishes him as a cruel and evil person, instead of only seeing him as a cruel and evil person by two characters' stories late into their stories. Because you're not really hiding any characterization there to have the bad guy be a bad guy, unless you want to
The power of the keepers, I
subvert
feel.
explanation,
A little bit of-
subvert expectations, and reveal he actually isn't a bad
Why
guy.
did you destroy her? How could you do something so cruel?
We've been over this. There is no reason. I do what I want. My property, yada yada, and so on.
Belphomet
Better
kind of
reason,
is like a
make one up
keeper,
yourself.
in that he
I
does
will
seem
make
to
you answer me.
just act with a massive amount of power and do whatever he
Who cares what
wants.
you want? Oh, when I destroy you, will you try to stay in one piece? I would hate to make a mess in my own tower.
So we might start seeing more and more characters like Belphomet that
You're starting to get bland.
don't inherently have to be vessels of keepers or be given power by the keepers.
So loud and pathetic. How does the saying go again? Can't live with them, can't let them live.
Where do you think you're going?
Home, and then to bed. But there's just so much to do. Gotta work in the Furies, and then there's... Oh, you're still here. I swear, the angry
He does seem to
snufflebots
be
always overstay their welcome.
very kind of like
I'm not letting you get
sporadic
away.
and based on whim. So if there is a keeper here, I wouldn't be surprised if it is Belphomet of the whim, of
Just
whim.
keep turning that hamster wheel
or something
a
like
little
that.
longer, and you'll probably come up with an answer you want to hear.
It
Until
would be
then, that's all.
an interesting surprise if it turns out he gets turned into a keeper, or if it turns out that he
Belphomet!
in some way created the keepers, although that would be weird because he's creating the Furies too, and they're still getting mentioned.
Well, well, losing yourself to anger.
How unlike
And
you.
here we have a small crossover in the story, but nowhere as bad as we've seen in previous
I did
chapters.
enjoy how this scene was unfolding, but you must not let your fury consume you. That is, unless you want your opponent to prevail.
Sorry. Lost my head.
Potentially, I think
presume that was Baphomet.
these crossover sections
But he seemed no greater than your average
might
human.
not really need to happen,
Yet he
or
got
they
the
could
best of
be
me.
Oh?
really shortened. Like,
These compels
it would
me
help
further to pursue him.
to have
You?
all the main
What will
leaders
you do in the meantime?
grow their relationships so that they just always attack and defend each other. So they only say one or two sentences. You can definitely see here
I'm going
the
back to the Resistance
J2's
hideout for now.
lines of dialogue
Did you
here are
drag this
definitely
metal
getting
doll all the way from there? One
cut out
imagines that
because
with
of
your magic,
Uriah's
you could
talking.
simply teleport in the blink of an eye.
Additional intruder detected. Initiating multi-target termination protocol.
You humans.
It's kind of funny that
mystifying creatures.
Mono is going to
I
yell
appreciate
at
your help,
Yuan
Urias.
for
It is
potentially
After all, I
angering
did enjoy
Belvamat,
watching your little
and
display of
no, I mean
power.
Mono is going to yell at Urias for potentially angering Belvamat, and probably not make the
This
same
should be far
speech to
enough.
Yuan.
Didn't encounter any more robots on the way out. Didn't seem like there were any traps either. Did Baphomet turn his attention elsewhere?
It would be
J2,
interesting
I'm
if it
sorry.
turns out that all the sentry
Turns out I'm
robots
not as
are
strong
being
as you thought I was.
somewhat
hadn't
guided
agreed
by
to come with you,
Belphomet,
then
and
none
that
of
there
this
is
would have happened.
really only
Uniform
100 or so of them
violation
anyways.
Non-permitted articles of clothing require authorization.
But it also
Please
is
present
more
your
than likely
authorization.
they escaped because Urias just defeated everything.
The jammer. It's not responding. It's either broken or run out of power.
Please present your authorization.
Guess this leaves me with no other choice.
So cram in another fight for no reason there. Like that whole chapter could have been
Warning. Acts of
left
aggression
out.
against enforcer units are strictly forbidden. Violators will be subject to immediate disciplinary measures. Warning. Acts of aggression against enforcer units are strictly forbidden.
Do we really
Violators
need
will be subject to
to
immediate
repeat
disciplinary
the
measures.
exact same thing? I know they're robots
Damn
and
this
all,
jammer.
but
Why isn't it ready
it would have been easy enough to just have one of these people.
Ewan, this way.
Tetra?
I sensed J2's emotional signal disappear, so I came
It
to the location where
does
I last
seem
felt
like
it.
they are kind of
Warning.
constantly
Acts of
just trying to
aggression against
visually
enforcer
change
units are
up
strictly
things by
forbidden.
having multiples of
Violators will be
animated,
subject to immediate
multiple
disciplinary
enemies,
measures.
which
It seems
I
a great
would
number
say a
of
palette
enforcer
swap
units are heading to these coordinates. Please,
might
this
take
way.
a little bit more time, like an
behind you.
hour at most. But it would
I sense no enemies
work
in
a
the
lot
vicinity.
better in this
We should
story.
encounter no problems now.
Thanks. Without you, I'm not sure I could have gotten out of there.
And the
I
palette
have
swap
to
doesn't
apologize.
actually have to coordinate with
If I'd
any
listened
kind
to
of
your
deck
warning,
or
things wouldn't
anything.
have gone so south.
Negative.
Like red
You
sentries
have
don't
done
have to
nothing wrong.
be
If anyone is to
bloodcraft
blame, it is
sentries
I.
versus
I was
blue
already
sentries
aware
being
of Io's fate.
like
I have been aware for quite some time now that
runecraft
Belphomet rebuilt
sentries.
her. Ania, Mono, and I are each equipped with emotional signal trackers, and Io's emotional signal was lost quite a while ago.
That seems like pertinent information, Tetra.
I wish I could have told you. But
So
I
once
also
again,
know what
Tetra is
this knowledge
hiding
would have
something.
done to J2. I did not wish for him to pursue even greater recklessness. If he found out, depending on his actions, I thought pushing him to the edge would present a potential disaster for the rest of the resistance. That, and I felt very sorry for his loss. But this decision was a mistake. I put you in danger.
She
and
seems
now
to have
J2's emotional signal is lost.
too much
I must bear
too
responsibility
much
for
mechanical
Just had more
functions.
power.
to potentially be a human in disguise. Although,
But Tetra,
you could
did
still
you bring him
easily
back using backup data?
write it.
Or did I hear
Right
you
that.
incorrectly the first time?
Affirmative. It takes time, but J2 and Io can be restored to their original forms.
Good. Then there's still hope.
Ewan,
She's still
let us
lying
seek
about that.
refuge in the nearest resistance base. Follow me.
Good
But
call.
you know she's lying about that, and the only way
Better control over myself.
you really
It's been
wouldn't
a
know
while
that
since
she's
I've felt such fury.
lying unless you played this
Such
story
loss.
only.
If she returns both J2 and Io to their old selves, then these emotions will have been worth it, I guess.
It
But
does
can she really
definitely
manage it?
feel
Is it
like you
possible
could
to
probably
resurrect
have
J2 and
just
Io and have what
played
makes
you
them
on
them
story and
intact?
skipped the other stories. It feels like we might go a little longer than the other
hideout
expansions.
is nearby. I will secure the perimeter, so please enter first.
Got it.
There's a lot of travel in this story.
Before we part, Ewan,
I don't think
did you encounter
inherently that's
Belphomet?
a bad idea, because
But I
the
don't think I was truly able to hold
a
my
sub
own
goal
against
here is
him.
definitely
He's
to
an
have people
unpredictable opponent.
walk around the worlds and discover the
Agreed.
worlds and see
It
more
is impossible
backgrounds
to anticipate
and
his
potentially
actions,
meet more
but then
characters.
again, I doubt
But
he
they've
would have
written
designed
this
me with the
badly, so there
capability
aren't
to
that many
calculate his every move.
characters.
And taking into consideration what others believe him capable of, we can expect greater erratic action still.
Right,
But
you
he
can
didn't destroy Io when he found her.
definitely
He
see
changed her.
a
What's he playing at?
better version
so
of this
opposed
kind
to
of
your
story
kind,
where
while
you fight
simultaneously leaving you to your
no
own
sentries at
devices?
all, and instead you have
That
a
I am not sure of.
unique
I too question his intentions
character.
at times.
unique
All robot
robotic
units were
character
created
based
by
off of one
Belphomet,
of the
and as
cards
such,
that
it would be trivial
are
for him
in
to
the
hone in on our
Steel
location
Rebellion
using our
expansion,
individual radio signals.
and that they're brainwashed or
Furthermore,
controlled.
I hypothesize that his enforcers, in their many numbers, outclass our own forces by a factor of 10.
But here you are.
Of course, we take measures to maintain our livelihood. We jam signals, relocate our hideouts at random timings, and hack into Belphomet's units. But that is
There's
all
a
we can
problem
do.
with
If it suited
animating a
Belphomet,
character
he
with
could still find us
little daggers and
instantaneously
knives,
destroy
and
us
then
just as
never
quickly
gonna
by
see him
mobilizing
actually
his
use it.
forces.
What's his aim? Better yet,
It's kind of like a Chekhov's
who
gun
is he?
issue.
I do not know. I thought you would understand his nature better, Ewan. But perhaps he is truly an unknowable being. It is this unknown factor that I find frightening. And that is not something Belphomet programmed me to feel. I developed fear after my awakening. Which makes things all the more terrifying. It is out of fear that I... No, never mind. I must go conduct a check at a different hideout now. Ewan, please take care of yourself.
You too, Tetra. Belphomet. No doubt in my mind that he's a threat to this world. The man is made of pure evil.
There would be
That's all I know about
a
him.
more interesting
His
twist
goal, his personality.
if it turns out that
Oh,
the
my.
errors
The power of the keepers,
themselves
I feel. I'm getting a little bit
are
oh,
what are
which one
threatening
is
this
it?
world.
Nerva.
That the idea of
and his connection to Nerva. Is he hiding
the
his
idea
power as
of
a vessel?
emotion perhaps
I don't have
overwhelming
answers
the
to any of it.
robots and causing them to act in a sporadic,
Let's go,
dangerous way would be interesting. But we're not really seeing that.
Did everything go okay?
Seems like that
I'm
the
fine,
awakened robots
but I'm
act
sorry.
perfectly normally,
J2
or at
wasn't
least
as lucky.
relatably to humans.
Oh no. J2.
I'm so sorry. It was completely my
But
fault.
that would be
Were you at least able
a
to find
interesting
Io?
twist if it turns out Belphomet is trying to save his world and all the robots,
J2
even the
felt the will
rebels,
of Io.
by stopping them from
Were you-
having errors
able
that
to
look
find
like
her?
emotions, and then the
Yes.
leaders from the different world are mistaking those emotions as a good thing.
Lady
Like,
Tetra will restore him, so
it
there's no point in worrying over his condition.
it is an interesting
Is that
argument
true?
to say that
Will J2 go back to being himself?
Affirmative. If Lady
it would be
Tetra
interesting to
herself
say
says so.
that emotions aren't
Has anyone
always
else ever
the
come
best
back
thing,
before?
No.
at least for robots.
But
And that
they
I could
will.
almost
We'll get J2
see a
and Io
Japanese
operational again, and
writer
be a family like before.
implying that,
I
certainly,
hope so.
too, because
I honestly
let's
don't
face
think
it,
I'll
the
be able to go
Japanese
on if things turn
are
out
not
otherwise,
usually overtly emotional,
It's sad.
but
Kind of
they are
feeling I don't
actually
think I can
fairly
handle it
emotional in
alone.
their private lives and
That's why I
in
have to
their
have
private
hope.
thinking. You don't have anime taking emotions and concepts to such extremes that it goes to without there being a strong desire for that stuff. And even their live action TV is pretty wild as far as drastic emotional type content. So while they may act fairly reserved in their day-to-day lives, they when they're drunk, when they're singing karaoke,
Is that true?
things like
Will
that,
J2 go back to being himself?
that they do tend to let loose.
If Lady Tetra herself says so.
Has anyone else ever come back before?
We're getting a story that is fairly
I hate to even
in
consider
line
this
with
possibility.
Isabel's story,
But what if Tetra was lying?
which
But they will.
it
We'll
does
get
make a
J2
good
and Io
argument that
operational again,
if
and
Isabel
we'll
and
be a family
Yuan
like
just
before.
stayed together and
I
had
honestly
the same
don't know
experience,
if I'll
that
be
would have
able
been
to go on if
fine.
things turn out otherwise, Yuan.
And then you could have put Luna and Urias together,
It's sad.
and
The kind of feeling I don't think I can handle.
then you would have
alone.
only had
That's
two
why I have to have hope.
storylines of about 13
If she were,
chapters.
that would mean there's only one way to save this world from despair.
Ewan?
Oh, it's you.
And
And in
Ewan,
one
I
piece
guess,
it
does
looks
bump
like.
into everybody
How are you holding
once.
up? I know you're used to jumping through dimensions.
Well, I had a run-in with this world's tyrant.
So what are your thoughts? Think we can beat him?
You would think these magical
Can't say
users
for
could
sure.
just use magic to change their outfit
Agreed.
to
That
make
man is
it
dangerous.
look like a
You're
uniform.
a mage.
You could do like a
So your
palette swap
abilities aren't too different from
fairly
his.
easily. Just change
What's
the
your
white
assessment?
into kind of a
I'm not so
bronze,
sure myself. I suppose
and
he
then
could
the
be
purple to
considered
kind of
mage
like a
sorts,
blue.
but he's not like any
and they
I've
could
ever
look
met.
exactly the same otherwise. Just a
Mages
color
usually
replacement
have a sense
idea.
of ambition, or at least a goal. But that man doesn't have either.
Instead, he rules this land without a sense of purpose, which seems preposterous.
Maybe he does have a goal in mind after all. Whatever it is, though, I don't think we'll ever understand him.
Thanks for the insight. What are you planning to do next?
It's not particularly a helpful
I've been
sentence to
searching
say.
for Tetra. Have you seen her?
I don't think we'll ever understand him.
She said that she was going to
It
inspect
might be
another
an
base.
honest statement, but
Got it.
it
Thanks.
doesn't move the story
Have you met
forward
up
in
with any
any
of the
way.
others?
Other than Urias, no. But according to Tetra, 4 of us in total made it to this world. You, me, him. You know the last one?
That would be Luna.
It may not be ideal, but it's up to the 4 of us to liberate this world.
Agreed. But it's still too soon to act. We don't know enough about Baphomet yet.
True enough.
This sector has been placed under curfew. Authorization is required to leave residential zones. Please present your authorization.
If you wanted to spend a little bit more of
We
a
know our
budget
own
in the
purpose
voice
now.
acting here,
That
you
we
could
do.
have like a surveyor like this say something specifically when they're in this like sewer section, which I assume this is like an underground sewer passageway, underground tunnel section. Like, so have them write a single sentence: "The tunnels are closed to all. Please submit for termination, and then there were probably 3 to 4 instances in which somebody in one of the stories was in the sewer section, and you could have used that same line of dialogue. Instead, what you have is them saying the same thing when they're in the tunnels as when they're in the junkyard, as when they're in the back alley or the tower. And it gets repeated a little bit more.
Unable to proceed with termination.
Here's the sentence not needed.
Thanks for the help.
I should be thanking you. You hurt?
Seems almost like they contracted with their publisher, or
I'm fine.
whoever wrote
Anyway,
this might have been a third-party company or a writer, and they may have contracted by the number of
Do you think
words.
it's really possible?
And sometimes it does feel like they're just stretching
Do you
out
think
the
she's really telling
the
truth?
number of rewards.
You have your doubts about her as well, I see.
I've traversed many worlds and seen many different kinds of life forms. I'm not proud to say that I've been deceived more than a couple of times along the way. Do you trust her, Isabel?
To be honest, I'm not sure. But if she is being deceitful, I'm sure she has her own reasons. Who knows what kind of corner she could be backed into.
I suppose so.
And we've already
Anyway,
seen
I
this
should get
section,
going.
so there's not
will you
a
do?
lot to say
I'll try to learn more about Belphomet.
when you're just seeing
Good luck
repeated
finding
content.
Tetra.
Be careful out there. The rules across some of these sectors are complicated. Don't get caught moving in an area under curfew.
Like, each one of these chapters is about an hour
Has he been
long
controlling when and
at
where
minimum,
people sleep?
and
Yes,
there's
it's completely
no
random.
action at all.
Some sectors are
If
forced
you
to work
think
for
about
days on
that
end, while others are made
compared to
sleep for
just
the
a
same
regular
period.
movie, like a Hollywood
I bet this
blockbuster
one is
movie,
currently under curfew.
there's
I haven't seen any people
considerably
around here.
less talking that
Appreciate
happens
the
and
warning.
considerably
Not at
more
all.
action
Stay
in
safe.
most Hollywood movies.
Urias, Isabel, Luna,
And maybe that
me.
is just
It's
a
up to us to save Iola.
effect of Hollywood movies
We
being
may each
targeted,
walk different paths,
at least in part
and we
or
may
in the
never
past,
operate like a
towards
unified team.
dumb Americans,
We're
but
all this world has.
yeah,
No,
this,
running
this
off
is
so soon.
really
Guess I can
slow.
get an early start on cleaning up the
and
mess you've made.
a lot of talk.
Starting with this unit
But since
here.
this effectively is a visual novel game,
We're already done.
when did this happen? We didn't see this happen.
We'll stand against you and win. Your merciless
You just
rule
had a
over this plane
flashback to
will come
something
an
it didn't
end
show
soon
us
enough.
before.
I just have to locate your whereabouts first.
Yep. Yeah, since this is a visual novel, I guess the real comparison would be what's the level of words and the quality of words in this compared to a novel. And in that, I am totally not the expert at all, so I have no idea. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is still,
I'm no closer
even
to
compared to
finding
like
Belphomet.
a
All the information I've obtained about his
teenager,
whereabouts
a
has
young
been shaky
young
at
adult
best.
story. It's probably not written anywhere.
And maybe these days would go by without being so tedious.
Shush. If an enforcer hears you, you'll be eliminated.
I don't know why we're getting
No,
flashbacks
you
to things.
shush. I'm not saying we should overthrow Lord Belphomet or anything. It's just, it'd be nice to choose a meal for once.
Warning. Use of such language directed toward Lord Belphomet is subject to immediate disciplinary measures.
No, I did nothing wrong.
Initiating disciplinary measures.
See, it's kind of ridiculous to have
Have they
these
given out rations
flashbacks.
yet? I'm starving.
No, stay strong. It's not sleeping hours yet. What if the enforcers catch you lying down?
This world is kept and controlled by one man, and he's morphed it according to his vision.
And see, if
I guess
you were
that's
gonna
not
just
rare for
have
a
you
pirate,
on,
though.
be able to kind
The
of
way Belphomet
meditate
manages his territory
and
is
see what's going on
simultaneously too
around
severe and
him.
Too sloppy. He's almost like a spoiled brat playing with toys.
Like
Attention.
that would be an
Citizens of
interesting
Iowa.
ability,
This
certainly.
is an emergency announcement.
But
Sleeping is to cease in residential sectors, and food service is to cease in ration distribution sectors. Attention.
you see, this is the kind of announcement that would have been better.
Sleeping is to cease in residential
It would have been better for
and
this
food
to have
service is
been
to cease in
overheard
ration distribution
at the
sectors.
beginning of the story, not late into the end.
What's going on now?
J2, my child, my precious boy. Come to me, J2, my child, my precious boy.
Io's voice? Is this some kind of sick joke?
What's wrong with this enforcer?
I've got a bad feeling about this.
It couldn't be.
J2. Huh? Who the hell are you?
So yeah, they really wrote themselves terribly.
I didn't want to
Interesting,
resort to
his
this.
lips moved, but he didn't say anything.
No choice. I'll have to tamper with your minds for a bit.
They're gonna give him some kind of
Oh,
special
I should
ability.
go home.
Yeah, you're right.
J2, it's dangerous
Like,
here. You need
all
to...
of a sudden they've written themselves in a terrible
My child,
corner, and they're having to
precious boy.
give new powers to Yuan to fix that.
Come to me, J2, my child, my precious boy.
I have to cut this voice off.
So I guess the question,
Come, J2, my child,
is this
boy.
a trick by Baphomet or the Furies, or is this actually a glitch of Io's memories and AI being programmed
Now
into a
arriving
robot,
at
a new
location of
robot?
Damaged exocom C0429. Target acquired.
Why, Baphomet? How could you?
Initiating termination protocol.
How could you resort to such cruelty?
It is cruel, certainly. I won't disagree with that, but it's hardly on a massive scale. It's hard to really relate to a robot, and a robot pining after his dead robotic mother. Probably because the story didn't characterize the two of them first. Like, if the story, if the story was going to go this way, we should have had more character building and relationship building between J2 and IO at the beginning.
To all my favorite lab intruders. Well, the angriest one, anyway. You know, I was racking my think tank trying to figure out how to pay you back for your insolence. And after sleeping on it, I hashed out the little scene you just saw. How was it? I bet you're mad. But you should know it was for a good cause. My entertainment. There's footage too, so I'll check it out later for a laugh.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I wouldn't mess with any more of my enforcers if I were you. All it takes is a high-frequency wave and... Oh, you don't want anyone to get hurt, right? Science tells us explosions aren't great for either flesh or metal.
This is Baphomet being written a lot better.
But I can finish off chumps like you in a second if I'm in the mood. But I truthfully can't be bothered wasting that second on something as boring as fighting you again. You get it yet? Nah, probably not. Look, the people of Iolon all know they can't oppose me. Why can't you get it to that thick skull of yours? You know what? Never mind. I'll just keep playing with you until you and your silly allies give up on life and become mere lumps of carbon. Any hoodle? Here's the boom.
So he's gonna blow him up and potentially blow up other people. And J2's gonna sacrifice himself, which is nice.
J2, you covered me from the blast.
Ewan, you've got power. Like I've never seen. Makes me feel a little stronger. Don't think I'm ready for combat or anything, but...
Hang in there. I'm going to find someone who can repair you. Just hold on for...
It's strange
wasn't operational
to not have
for a while,
much
but I thought I heard Io.
character development for Baphomet in the other stories, and then you do have it here in this story.
Finally, I'm me. Myself again.
And it, seeing this story then kind of makes more sense if the to be continued point of the story would have been that Baphomet just got on a recording and
here, J2.
threatened to blow up the entire city if they didn't surrender. Like, making just an extremely crazy demand that Tetra and the other sisters would potentially concede to save the people and the humans in the city.
Again, the three of us. Thank you, Io. Thank you, Mom.
Don't worry, J2. You'll be okay. Is that true? Will J2 go back to being himself?
Affirmative. If Lady Tetra herself says so.
Has anyone else ever come back before?
So once again, they're just...
No.
This is like the second or third time we've seen in the story that flashback.
You will find a way. Tetra. I hope I can trust in you.
It is fairly believable in electronics, though. If a robot shut down, it might literally lose all of its memories. Assuming it doesn't have like a hard drive or and is just running off of like RAM and no battery backup or anything.
I've been looking for you.
So I guess he just carried J2.
Tetra, will you repair J2? Well, can you repair him? Even if the effects are not immediate. I thought as much.
I saw Isabel once more while you were gone, in a place that only I should have knowledge of, in a place where no one should be able to venture. And yet, there she was, where she learned of my lies, my sins. Isabel is kind.
It's going to be
but she is
redundant
also strong.
to have her
understood what I had
confess
to do,
now, and
that
then the
is
next
why she
chapter
gave me
have
a
her
second
confess
chance.
again.
Sounds like her.
So they're going to have to be careful to not
Affirmative.
have the same
She should be
thing
in
said
one of our
twice in a
hideouts
row.
now. I wanted to be alone, so I left her. Lying was not in my original design specifications.
It
so
does
I am sure
seem
you
like
two were able
all
to
the
detect my
main
greatest
character robots
That you
do
can't fix any of your
act
comrades?
fairly childish,
one. Affirmative. There is no
on
backup
top of
data,
Baphomet.
and even if there were, we have no method of manipulating it. And even with the proper methods, nothing guarantees they would return with their original personality markers. I have told nothing but lies.
You certainly have.
You will not ask why? This knowledge may be of some benefit to you.
It's not that I won't ask.
J2 thought the world of Io. Were you able to find her?
It's just a ton of flashbacks in this story that we didn't see originally.
I'm me. Myself again. But my camera and sensors aren't functioning. Is Io okay?
I don't get this. Like,
Here.
it kind of feels like they swapped
She's
writers
here,
at,
J2.
in this chapter. That they
She's better
gave
than ever.
the bad writer who was
There's just no need
in
to ask.
charge of
I haven't known you for long.
chapter
but I get
1,
it.
2, and 3 the job of writing
Understand?
Yuan's story
Yes.
in
Up
chapter,
until now, you've been
in
the
this
sole
chapter.
carrier of this burden.
and then they gave the good writer
If that is the case,
who was
what
writing
I have done
Yuan's
is unforgivable.
additional story
Especially-
for chapters
especially
1,
with
2, and
J2.
3. They put him in charge of everybody else's story.
Ewan, J2 was very kind. He loved
But
Io
inherently,
dearly, and the day
I don't
J3
think that
awakened,
fixes
he took to his
anything.
role
I
as
think
her
they need
elder
to
brother immediately.
probably get
Units
rid
like
of the bad
J2,
writer
J3,
completely
and Io are
and
unlike my
have
sisters and I.
a single
They were
author
awakened well after their
write
initial assembly,
all
but
of the
J2
stories.
especially grew to love his free will. It is
But
sad.
There definitely is a major narrative
I am the one who
difference
formed the resistance.
in this
But even
story
still,
compared
you
to
have surely noticed I have
Isabel's,
done nothing.
Luna's, and
All
Urias's
I can
stories.
do is stay outside of
of the
Belphamet's
same
reach
chapter.
And watch as my fellows are destroyed.
It's getting
But
a
you
little too
summoned me,
wordy.
didn't you? That's acting to better things for yourself and those around you.
However, that is the extent of my actions. After bringing you to this world, I did not have so much as a simple plan to utilize you and your comrades. Despite everything that has happened, I have returned to my routine of cowering beneath Belphamet day in and day out. It is frightening knowing that everyone around you will be destroyed. It is frightening.
There's
knowing
really
the
not
tyrant
much
behind
to
the
say
destruction.
here.
All I wanted was to protect them.
That feeling isn't wrong.
I would
Tetra.
say some of these
You've done enough.
things she's saying may
And
have
yet,
been better
To fear
in
is to do
the
nothing,
final
and that
scene.
is precisely what I have accomplished.
Once again, we have
I have
the
been at
winking,
the mercy of Belphamet for so long,
which they
so long that I
oddly
am
use.
afraid I have grown incapable.
like somebody
It is
scripted
something I
that.
have
That's not
understood for some
automatic.
time now. You see, a typical human may cast aside his or her given role. But a machine is not so lucky. It cannot choose to escape its purpose. But I am different. I am a machine with emotions. A soul trapped in a metal shell.
You're lost because you have emotions. Without them, you wouldn't be able to continue on.
I am not sure that what I am doing now could be considered continuing on. Isabel comforted me, called me a friend. But does that fix anything?
If you want to correct your mistakes, you need power.
It's too wordy.
And there
We're
is
an hour and
power,
22
Tetra, to
minutes
be
into
gained
this.
from embracing your fear.
It's just going on too
Power
long.
From fear?
This is not something I had ever hoped to discuss with you or the other resistance members. But enough is enough.
So he's gonna give the bad
The one
advice.
toying with your emotions, and the one who's been tormenting you this whole
He's gonna
time
tell her
is
to
Belphamet.
turn fear into
What
hate.
he's done is unforgivable.
It's kind of like a
But we have to kill him with a power as evil as his own.
Star Wars translation. Turn your fear into
I've
hate
also
and then turn that
committed
hate
terrible
into
sins.
power.
There was a time when I sought more power than I could handle, and it ended up destroying people. My loved ones, and everything I've ever known. All of it gone.
We do generally know that Yuan
Purgation.
probably
There was so much
summoned
guilt I
Nexa
could have drowned in it.
Nerva.
I
to
feared
gain
the one who
power.
manipulated me. The keeper known as Nerva. Despair was the only emotion I knew. But I pushed forward. First, I changed the fear into hate. And then I manifested that hate into real power. And that's the power I'll use to get my revenge against her. No matter how long it takes.
This part here should have
Can
totally
emotions
been
truly be harnessed into strength?
retranslated.
Then perhaps even I could.
It's worth a shot. Your despair can consume you if you let it. And that would leave Belphamet's atrocities unchecked.
Yeah, you
And we
could
can't let
have
that come to
translated that
pass.
to
Got it,
I
Tetra?
turned my sorrow into
There is no happiness in this world. It was all stolen from
anger, and that
you.
anger
There is
into
no sadness
power,
in this world.
or that
Not while
anger
you're
into
denied its
action.
Catharsis. There is nothing to look forward to. Not a thing. The only thing left? Anger. And that is what will change your world.
It really is a
You're
very
not alone any
Star
longer.
Wars dark
You've got
side
allies
argument
right
that
here,
he's
including
making now.
me.
Just
We'll
join the dark
change the
side,
anger
Luke.
of your people into power and end this conflict together.
Ewan, I will fight,
Good.
and I will not be afraid. No, I shall use my fear and make it fuel for rage.
So a lot of talking in this
Embrace
chapter.
Your sins and mistakes. Each one will make you stronger than the last.
Which this would
until you have what
this
it
would have been
takes to
perfect
face
if
him.
this was the final chapter
Then it is time
of
to
this
gather everyone together.
section,
Can you excuse me for a
and
moment?
then it just shows the Shadowverse logo and does the to be continued.
Hatred, anger,
which they didn't.
vengeance. There's no salvation in any of it. But then again, salvation isn't what's important now. It's the future of an innocent world that's at stake. Baphomet, you're not going to do as you like any longer. Your time has come.
So yeah. Not particularly loving this story because unlike the previous U1 stories, it doesn't really combine or reveal too much. We
Looks
did
like
now
we're all here,
see what was not meant, what we didn't see as far as the events of
Things are
J2
going to
and
work out. With
AIO,
our forces combined, there's no way we'll lose.
and we do now know who
I appreciate your
gave
words
the
of
terrible
comfort.
advice to Tetra that caused her
No,
to give
I
this
have
speech.
decided two things. First, I will come clean
But there is
regarding my
really
sins.
no reason
And
to have
secondly,
this
I will make
section
amends for
here,
them.
since this is the
Starting now.
fourth time now we've heard
Everyone,
this speech,
I told you that so long as we
and
have
it's
access
not
to
like
your backup
they're
data,
sneaking
then you
in
need not fear destruction.
new lines of dialogue and making it
This
longer,
was false.
or that
If
there's
you are destroyed,
a
I do not
heavy
know of a
new
way to restore you.
understanding of what's
I-
being said.
I have lied to you.
My reaction to this
No.
is pretty much the same as it was the first time I saw it.
She'll never come back.
This is awful. Tetra, we trusted you.
And yeah, in the last recording, I showed how you could easily have cut half of
Placed
the
your faith in me as
half
your
of the
leader,
dialogue
and I
out and
accepted it in turn.
sped things
I
up.
felt my purpose was to guide you,
That-
protect you. But the more
Even
I
when you're
cared,
only doing
the more I
4
began to
leaders
deny
out of
what
8
was happening.
per chapter,
I wanted salvation
having
for our
each
people,
leader's
world order.
story take an hour and a
But
half
it
at
seemed like an
minimum
impossibility,
is too
and I let
long.
fear get the
You,
best of me.
you could
I
easily
wavered when I should have been rebelling.
do another pass
I am
of
sorry for
editing
what I have
to
done
get
to
it
you.
down to an
I
hour.
have no right to stand amongst you as a fellow
And even an
robot.
hour is a
I
lot,
have
frankly.
no right to stand amongst you at all. When I first recognized that I am nothing more than a flawed machine,
The
I
main
felt an
story
intense
in this
fear
game
deep within my circuitry.
is so long
But
that
then a dear
it
companion told me to
definitely
turn
has
that
been getting
fear
in the
into
way
hatred, and
of
that
me
hatred
actually
into
playing the
power.
game.
I remember his
And
eyes were steely and sorrowful as he
I,
spoke.
I've been kind of playing this
Everyone,
game
I have
non-stop.
wronged you, but I
for
will not let my
several
sins
weeks
decide
now.
our future, which
It's
is why,
really
which is
a
why,
lot.
From today, I will face Baphomet
And then the
with
music
all the force I
faded
can
out in the
muster.
background. I will say
No more
the
hiding.
music
I will
definitely
fight the
better in this
tyrant that
chapter, but
threatens us, the
still
tyrant
seems
that
to have some
threatens
problems.
Iolon.
Like either have the music continue to play at this point or have it fade out,
Baphomet is as fierce as he is cruel.
or
If we
just
attack
have
him
the
head-on, he will
background
surely employ
effects
any means necessary to win,
playing
no matter the casualties.
the whole time.
You, me,
Maybe
his own
fade in
forces,
the music at the
destruction will
very
be
end of the
immense.
speech.
If you are caught in the crossfire, you may not make it back. The only one who could repair you is Baphomet himself, and I assure you that will not happen. This life is the only one you have, but I am pleading with you to lend it to me, so that we may fight together and save our world.
There is definitely a point here where they introduce the idea of them being resurrected, just to get rid of the idea that they are resurrected,
I'll fight.
when
J3,
you could have
are you certain?
easily had the
Knowing
situation
that J2 and
start
Io won't ever come
where
home.
they are desperate
It's almost
and
too
they
much to
know
bear.
that they're sacrificing their lives and
I
that
want
they
to
are
reject this sadness,
fighting
but that would be
rebellion
like
force,
rejecting the fact that they were destroyed by Baphomet.
just struggling to
I'll
survive and
accept
struggling
this
to get
sadness,
any level of
change it into
success at
hate.
all.
And then I'll take that hate and turn it into power.
I am glad to hear that. Thank you, J3.
Yeah. It does kind of make a lot of what occurs in this chapter unimportant,
I'll go too. I've got family to
just because of
protect.
Tetra's lie, and
It sounds awful.
really no
Can
reason
you
for it.
imagine? We're talking about dying here.
Really no reason for a robot to
Yeah.
lie to the robots
We
anyways.
might not come back from this.
Well, Urias, I imagine you're elated to know the conflict to end all conflicts is soon upon us. Are
You definitely
prepared to
could
see
have
my
had
sisters in action?
these sections
Do not disappoint me.
cut out too.
I just hope I can do my part.
Like, only see
I'll
this
help too,
section
Ania.
when
We'll
you're
work together.
watching it by Luna
Thank
on
you,
Luna's
Luna.
path. Only see Urias' section
How
when you're
about you?
playing Urias'
Looks like you've
section.
already made up your mind.
Only see Isabel's section
Am I really
when
that easy to read?
Isabel is,
Not at all.
you're playing
Just
Isabel's
thought you'd
path.
want to keep an eye on your allies.
Or in this
We'd be
case,
glad
maybe
to have your
you
strength regardless.
would keep this in Yuan's path because
Then I'm
Yuan
in.
is talking to Isabel.
To those of you who have made the difficult choice to fight with me, I
Seeing
thank
at this
you,
point,
and I ask you now
the
to
music
place
does
your trust in me.
jump back in, so the previous
I will
music
not
was
promise
kind
you
of
anything.
unimportant.
Rather, I will make a vow. We will
And
defeat Belphomet.
You
and we
you
will
kind of have
secure our future.
conflicting desires when you're playing music in the background versus
Now, let us prepare
versus playing
for our
music to
true rebellion
build
starts
up
today.
the emotional impact. Yep, that definitely was some weirdness. So, Luna's story was basically a side story. Urias' story was basically a side story. Isabel's story was the best story, and the main story, I would say, with Yuan learning a little bit more too. So, but Yuan's story in this chapter feels incredibly worse than it has been in like the Guild War expansion and the Morningstar expansion, where his story was actually particularly good. Next time we'll be doing the Gears of Rebellion Uprising, which should be a combined experience of maybe 16 chapters in total. Orisa and her companions attempt to cross into Avalon, the world of Tetra is from. However, only Yuan, Isabel, Luna, and Urias make it, set on completing their mission. Nonetheless, the four explore Avalon, where they bear witness to the cruelty of its dictator Belphomet. They join a rebellion that seeks to free Tetra and her friends, all robots that have gained emotions from the yoke of Belphomet's self-centered reign. So this really is just a recap of what we saw, which honestly, it does kind of make an interesting argument that perhaps these sections themselves could just be edited out and you could have a easier experience. Like, if you just played the prologue, then immediately jumped into the Morningstar conclusion, and then you immediately from that jumped into the Guild Wars conclusion, that would have definitely made it easier by far to get through the main story and accelerate the experience. I don't think we accomplished anything on the missions or achievements since we didn't actually play any games. It'll be interesting to see what the other four characters were doing at the same time, but I imagine their side story, it could be written better, and that would be nice, but then it will feel a little unfair if that is the case. Let's go ahead and celebrate. It does seem like you pretty much have a high chance of getting a pack every day as long as you log in every day. In one form or another, you get either perhaps enough money through the daily quests to buy a pack, or you get a pack ticket. So, yeah. there definitely is something to that idea, and that's more interesting. If Magic the Gathering Arena, for instance, gave you a single pack every single day, and there wasn't so many other ways in which you kind of needed to spend your gold, very expensive ways that you needed to expend the gold, that'd be amazing. Same is kind of true with Hearthstone, because in Hearthstone they did have some solo adventure sections that were kind of side stories, but you would have to buy them either with premium currency or real world money, or maybe you could buy them with gold, but then they even hid how you pulled that off. That made it unlikely that you could open a pack every day. And at a certain point, that is what real world collectible card games are all around, is the idea that you would open a pack a day, or at least a pack a week, if you're going to your game shop, your comic book store once a week. You would just have your weekly allowance and open your packs there. See, we got 4-Pillar Tortoise, which this looks new and it's animated. Ward, randomly put a 4 play point Havencraft follower or amulet from your deck into your hand. Ward when it's evolved. I did try to build a Forgecraft deck with the cards I have. It isn't particularly great, but I do think I'm going to have to just build decks regardless, and live with what I've got. And I don't think I'll do full deck rebuilds anytime soon until the next expansion happens, at least, because I don't expect, even though I just praised this game for basically like letting you open a pack a day, there's less variety of the cards, so it's less likely that you would replace one kind of card with another. Here we got another Prisma Plum Bird. Randomly summon the Pegasus or Pinion Prayer. I'm fairly certain gotten at least one of those. Summon Pegasus, summons a Pegasus. Pinion Prayer summons the Holy Falcon. It summons the Holy Falcon. And it's randomly one or the other. Next we have Spirit Curator, Burial Rite, draw a card for Shadowcraft. I've yet to been able to build anything that uses Burial Rite. Then we have another Titanic Showdown. A lot of silvers here. And I did, in the last recording, finally figure out what these gems mean, whether it means what class it is. And we have another Titanic Showdown. And another Cloud Gigas, which I have a lot of those. A Dragon Impact, give +1/+1 and rush to a Dragoncraft follower in your hand. Deal 5 damage to a random enemy follower. And then Tyrant of Mayhem, this may be our second copy of this. Draw a card. If Vengeance is not active for you, deal 2 damage to your leader. Otherwise, deal 2 damage to enemy leaders. Okay, well, I don't think there's anything else to say or do. That's where we are once again. We're still probably, if it took us, well, an hour and a half times 4 would be about 10 hours to do that chapter, and then it will take 1 to 2 hours for the next chapter, and then another 10 hours for the next chapter after that, and then 1 to 2 hours for that. We're potentially getting to the point where we may only have somewhere between 16 and 20 hours left of main story, which is still a ton of story, but it's way better than where we were. And it still will very much depend on when we get to chapter 9 and finish that. Is that going to in some way unlock a chapter 10? Because they have chapter 9 through 14 here, so there could be 5 more chapters. Although we may also find that this, when they say chapters, they don't mean episode 9 through 14. They may mean that chapter 9 and 14 in the episode called Invasion of the World Reaver, which is the most recent one, have unlocked. And so they may very well be releasing groups of like 5 sub-chapters at every expansion, which that would be weird because that means the story would just kind of end in a random place with no finality to it, and that would definitely suck. Well, regardless, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.